Imagine waking up one day to find that money no longer works. The thing we rely on for everything, buying food, paying bills, saving for the future, suddenly stops having value. What would that world look like? Could society function without money? What happens when the very thing that holds economies together fails? This scenario may seem far-fetched, but it's happened before in history, and it could happen again. Today we're diving deep into a terrifying thought experiment. What happens when money fails? The shocking truth. Now, before you dismiss the idea, consider this. Money is essentially a system of trust. It's not the paper or the coins themselves that have value, but rather the belief that others will accept it in exchange for goods and services. If this trust is broken, everything collapses. You might be thinking, that's impossible. Money is deeply entrenched in our society. But what if I told you that throughout history there have been instances where entire economies collapsed due to the failure of money? This isn't just theory, it's reality. It's happened before and could happen again. To understand what happens when money fails, let's take a step back and look at what money truly is. In its simplest form, money is a medium of exchange. It allows us to trade goods and services without having to rely on the outdated bartering system. Money also acts as a store of value and a unit of account. Essentially, it's a tool that makes modern civilization possible. But when that tool stops working, what alternatives do we have? What happens to a society that loses trust in money? In the past, there have been several instances where the failure of money led to massive disruptions. One of the most infamous examples comes from the hyperinflation of the Weimar Republic in Germany after World War I. The German government printed massive amounts of money to pay for war reparations, which caused the value of the mark to plummet. People saw their savings wiped out overnight. The price of bread skyrocketed, and it was uncommon for workers to be paid in wheelbarrows full of cash that was only worth a fraction of its original value. People had to use money in increasingly absurd ways, such as using it to wallpaper their homes or burn it for heat. The failure of money turned everyday life into a chaotic nightmare. Hyperinflation is just one way that money can fail, but it's not the only way. Another form of collapse happens when an entire monetary system loses credibility. For instance, the collapse of the Soviet Union in the early 1990s brought with it a collapse of the ruble. With no faith in the currency, people turned to barter and informal markets. They stopped using the ruble altogether in favor of items that could actually be exchanged for goods. In this case, the ruble was still technically in circulation, but it became practically useless. And that's the key point. When the trust in money is lost, people stop using it. They seek alternatives, whether it's bartering, foreign currencies, or even precious metals like gold and silver. But how does this happen? The answer lies in the idea of a currency losing its value. This happens when there's too much currency in circulation relative to the available goods and services, leads to inflation, or, in extreme cases, hyperinflation. When people can no longer rely on money to store their wealth or pay for goods and services, the economy begins to fall apart. This is when society enters a period of great instability. People are no longer able to buy necessities. Families can no longer afford food, and businesses can't pay their employees. As this collapse spreads, trust in institutions erodes. Governments might try to step in with new policies, such as printing more money or even creating a new currency, but these solutions often fail because the root problem, the loss of trust, isn't addressed. Let's talk about how society would function without money. Without a reliable currency, people would be forced to revert to barter systems. But bartering comes with its own set of problems. Imagine you're a farmer and you grow vegetables, but you need a pair of shoes. You can't exactly trade a bushel of tomatoes for a pair of shoes unless the person who makes shoes happens to need tomatoes. The entire system breaks down. So while bartering might work in small communities, on a large scale it's inefficient and difficult. This is why money was invented in the first place. It's a system that allows for easier exchange and provides a common unit of value. Without money, the entire structure of the global economy would collapse. What would happen to banks in a world where money fails? Banks rely on money for their business model. They use it to lend, borrow, and make investments. If money loses its value, banks cease to function in the way we know them today. Savings accounts become meaningless, loans turn into worthless paper, and investments crash. The stock market, which is already volatile in the best of times, would plummet to rock-bottom levels. People would panic, leading to runs on the remaining valuable assets, and the financial system would come crashing down. It would be a chain reaction, and no one would be spared from the fallout. Governments might try to step in and restore order. But the problem is that once trust in the financial system is gone, it's incredibly difficult to bring it back. Governments could attempt to create a new currency, but it would take years, if not decades, to regain even a semblance of trust. In the short term, people would turn to alternative methods of securing their wealth and paying for goods. Precious metals like gold and silver, for example, have historically been used as stores of value when paper currencies fail. These physical commodities are seen as more stable than paper money, as their value isn't tied to the decisions of a central bank or government. What does this mean for the average person? Money fails, people who have invested their wealth in savings accounts or retirement funds would find themselves with nothing. They'd have no safety net, no cushion to fall back on. People would have to rely on what they have in the moment: food, shelter, and basic resources. Those who have essential skills like farming, healthcare, and construction would be in high demand, while others may struggle to find work. The wealthy would no longer be able to use their wealth to secure power and influence. Instead, those who can adapt to the new system, who can barter or trade, would become the new elite. In this new world, without money, the role of government becomes critical. But governments would face a massive challenge in restoring order. Without money, how could governments fund their operations? How could they provide services from law enforcement to healthcare? The absence of money would likely result in political instability. Governments might become authoritarian as they attempt to maintain control. Social unrest would be rampant, and chaos could ensue. Now you might think this sounds too extreme. It would never happen today. But let's take a moment to consider the state of the global economy. In recent years, we've seen unprecedented levels of debt and inflation across the world. While we haven't reached the point of total collapse, many economies are teetering on the brink. The COVID-19 pandemic and its aftermath have strained global supply chains, exposed weaknesses in our financial systems, and highlighted just how fragile our economic systems can be. Even today, we hear about nations facing the collapse of their currencies. Venezuela, for example, has suffered from hyperinflation for years. The bolivar has lost virtually all of its value, and people there are forced to live on barter or use foreign currencies. Zimbabwe faced a similar situation, where hyperinflation rendered the Zimbabwean dollar worthless, and citizens were forced to use US dollars instead. These are stark reminders that money can fail, and when it does, it causes chaos. So what can we do to prepare for a potential collapse of the monetary system? While we may not be able to predict the future, there are steps we can take to protect ourselves. Diversifying assets, investing in tangible resources, and building community networks are just a few ways to hedge against economic collapse. But the most important thing to remember is that when money fails, it's not just about the loss of wealth. It's about the breakdown of society and the systems that hold it together. A world without money is a world in crisis. As we wrap up, remember this: money, as we know it, is not guaranteed. It's a system that relies on trust. And when that trust is broken, everything can fall apart. The failure of money would be catastrophic, but it's not something we should dismiss as impossible. History has shown us that it can happen, and when it does, it will change everything.